Hey everybody, welcome to Mental Health Matters. This is Tom Duff with St. Louis Counseling. Check our services out at stlouiscounseling.org. And you are listening to the podcast that helps break down stigma, promotes mental health awareness within our community. So if you are interested in sponsoring this podcast or just making a donation to our agency, feel free to find Debbie Dugan on our website or go to DDUGAN at CCSTL, and Debbie will tell you how you can help spread a word of the good things in our community about mental health. So as always, we try to have some awesome guests come on and talk with us, and today is no exception. So we have some of our finest from St. Louis County working with us today from the St. Louis County Police Department. Not just St. Louis County, St. Louis County Police Department. But we have Sergeant Gary Robertson, Police Officer Chris Koester, and Lisa Flamion, who is the Flamion,
yep.
Flamion, Community Mental Health Coordinator with BHR. A lot of crisis counseling, I imagine, that you're doing as well, too. So welcome, y'all. I'm thrilled to have you guys here.
Appreciate it.
Thanks to have us.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a lot about the Crisis Interventions Team, CIT. But first, I'm always curious with people in law enforcement, why did you choose being an officer?
Wow, I mean, for me, it goes back to me just being a little tyke running around in the streets of Ferguson and Berkeley, growing up as a small kid. I've wanted to be a policeman as far back as I could remember. 4, 5, 6 years old, having memories of police cars driving down my street. I just thought, man, that just looks amazing. And then once I really understood the concept of, these guys and gals are out there trying to help people, I've never once looked back.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Chris?
I would have to agree. So for me, it goes back to my grandfather and his brother were both policemen. And I think it's just a calling, and there was just a lot of excitement wrapped around, the job and being able to help people and always doing something different. Don't like to sit anywhere, one place for too long. So I just felt that it was a good fit. And like I said, it was something I've always thought about, always wanted to do since I was very small.
And Lisa, well, like me in the social service field, what has driven you to get involved there?
I really liked the psychology aspect. I'm intrigued by how the brain works and how different responses trigger different situations out of people, and so it was always something that was very interesting to me. And so I kind of landed in crisis counseling while I was waiting for a school position to open up, and I decided that crisis counseling was it. I don't want to sit at a desk all day, same thing. I like being out in the community, and every day is a new day. So we've always got something new coming down the pipeline, so it's very, very interesting and exciting all at once.
Yeah, it's something different every day. I'm sure that's very true. And
she's great. We love her to death.
That's awesome. And the concept we'll get into even more in regards to the crisis counselor being with the officers. So I think it's going to be pretty intriguing to hear some of those stories. But from a law enforcement standpoint, like, what's rewarding for you in this career?
It sounds cliche, but it's helping people. The amount of people that I've had the opportunity to help in my 20-year career in law enforcement is just amazing. It's, from, having an opportunity to, do CPR on somebody when they're in a medical emergency, to talking to somebody that's in a crisis state and holding some type of a weapon, knife, gun, to their head, or, pulling somebody out of a car, after a car accident, to just simply answering questions to somebody that, doesn't understand the laws. Just like we were simply, joking about right before this. You always have an opportunity to just help somebody, and you never know what the day's going to hold for you.
How about you, Chris?
For me, this street was an exciting place to be, and I certainly got an opportunity to help a lot of people. When I really got excited about a career, it's when I found crisis intervention, and I started working in crisis intervention full time, because we absolutely save lives, and that's just such a fantastic feeling. Now, there's a lot of folks that we reach out to that maybe aren't ready for help, But man, when they are, and we can move in and point them in the right direction, get them on track, and then, later hear the success story, towards the ending, and how they're doing well, they're back on their feet, working a job, whatever the case may be, just enjoying life once again. It's very satisfying. On top of that, things get even more serious, and we're in situations where, there's a threat to life, and we're able to intervene and bring some positivity to it, and resolve it and stabilize things, and it's very rewarding work.
So let's talk about crisis intervention team, all right? Because I think there's probably a lot of our listeners, hopefully there's thousands of listeners tuning into
Well,
this.
we hope so.
Yeah, there better be, right? But I think it's probably some new information for a lot of people, even though you guys have been doing this for a while. But for some general public, they may not realize this. So let's
Yes.
kind of just start, like, what CIT, Crisis Intervention Team, what is it?
Sure. No, absolutely. So CIT stands for Crisis Intervention Team, and that program originated in 1988 down in Memphis, Tennessee. Since 1988, it's slowly grown into an international program, and it came here to the St. Louis County area in the later parts of 2003, beginning of 2004. Since then, we've actually been a part of training more than 5,200 law enforcement officers in the Eastern District of Missouri since that inception, since we brought it here to St. Louis County. What is it? It's a 40-hour block of advanced level training for our police officers that are out there. We're teaching officers anything, throughout this 40-hour week. That could be 4 hours of de-escalation, understanding the crisis state. We have subject matter experts coming in from all across the St. Louis area that are talking about their field. We have an hour block on medication, understanding medications. So who do we have come in for that? We have a pharmacist come in. So whatever that subject is that we're in, that we're specifically talking about during that 40-hour block, we have the best of the best come in to teach these officers those skills. Tactical liability and considerations. We have the lived experience panel. I'll have Chris talk about that here in a second. But we have a wide variety of different topics that we're squeezing into that 40-hour, that 5-day week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the panel.
So the week starts in a pretty generic fashion. We cover a lot of, what you might consider kind of just the basics, and some of it's dry material. But as we get into the week, we try to limit the numbers in our group, so we have kind of a cohesive experience for everybody, and it gets more law enforcement specific as the week goes on. Well, one of the things that we do midweek to kind of bring everything together is we have a lived experience panel. So we have folks that are living with mental illness, severe mental illness, come in from the community, volunteer their time, and they sit in front of this group of officers, and there's basically a discussion regarding what they've experienced with law enforcement. Maybe some, they'll give some hints, some pointers on to the officers on how, they would like to see folks approached that are in crisis or living with mental illness. And it turns into a discussion where these folks tell their personal stories. Law enforcement can then ask, particular questions about their situations, and everybody learns and everybody grows. And if nothing else, the big thing that those sessions do is it really breaks down that stigma with mental illness. And it helps officers realize that, wow, I'm really dealing with, somebody that's in crisis because of a mental illness, and get past that stigma and get past that, that whole boundary that's up, that prevents us from, giving that something a little extra when we're given the opportunity to help these folks and to direct them towards, real care.
So then the concept of bringing in the crisis counselor as part of that team, how long has that been going on? Like, I guess maybe locally here.
For about
5 years.
Yeah, 5 to 6 years now. That was an initiative from Jay Nixon while he was our governor, the CMHL program, Community Mental Health Liaison.
And then, so Lisa, what kinds of things are you, so you're accompanying when on a call, right? You're there as well too?
Typically not on a call. Once the officer responds to the situation, they file a CIT report. And then myself, and I have a counterpart through BJC as well, she'll come in and we'll pull all of the reports, and we'll reach out to each person individually check to make sure that things are okay. What kind of support might they need in the community? Maybe linkage to resources. Maybe it's just something as simple as they need to speak with a counselor. Or maybe they need access to medications. So that's kind of our role. And then on days like today, we'll spend the whole day doing follow-ups, meeting with folks who are at that higher level of risk or more chronic or more serious situations. So we'll show up at their door and chat with them and, you know, try to be in their space with them and get to know them on a level that's outside of their crisis, so we can help get them linked up to those services that are going to best support them and try to minimize that crisis incident.
So just to give you a little bit more of a better idea, Tom, so all these officers that are out there that we see, you know, driving in the patrol cars, are out there patrolling in the community, they're answering 911 calls for service. Okay, so just to give you an example, just for St. Louis County Police Department alone, we're a little over 1,000 commissioned police officers. Okay, out of those 1,000 commissioned police officers, roughly 550 of those are CIT trained. All right, they're out there answering those calls. So when someone calls 911 or calls that non-emergency line, and these dispatchers and call takers, when they're receiving this information of, you know, low-level crisis to high-level crisis, or somebody that might actually be, you know, applying self-harm at that time, they're going to dispatch officers, including that CIT officer. Once those officers arrive on the scene, they de-escalate the situation and make the scene safe. Then at that point in time, once everything is slowly, you know, wrapping up, then they're going to do a CIT report. That report comes to our office. So what's pretty interesting about what Chris and I have the opportunity to do is we are the only 2 full-time crisis intervention officers in all of St. Louis County.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
Right.
So areas to cover.
So just to give you an idea, again, so just for St. Louis County, we have 8 precincts. So, in any given month, our average, these officers that are out there on the streets answering these 911 calls, they're going to between 400 and 600 CIT calls for service a month. A month.
Wow. Wow.
All right. And then out of all the reports that they're doing, between 100 and 200 CIT reports, those are coming to Chris and I for review. And then that's where the job gets really cool. So that's where Chris and I, we get the opportunity to hook up with Lisa or hook up with Veronica West, who is the other CMHL for St. Louis County, but she's employed by BJC Behavioral Health. So depending on who's available for that day, we're going to take one of these crisis counselors out with us, and we're getting that face-to-face. And we're going to do whatever we can to build that rapport with that individual, let them know that we care. And then at the same time, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that they have access to resources, medications, whatever we got to do to make sure they don't slip through the cracks and get back to that crisis state.
So how do you see the community responding, the clients responding, you know, when the follow-up from you guys, because police can get this negative stereotype. Oh no, the police are here. What's going to happen, right?
Oh, yeah,
they're going
absolutely.
to, do something. What's that client response when you guys are showing up?
Yeah, so that's a great question for where we're at in this discussion, because that's something else that the CMHL program and Lisa specifically gives us. Because, as you mentioned, sometimes folks, are just kind of put off by the police showing up at their door, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody always thinks, something negatively, right off the bat, when in our case, that's not necessarily the case. So if we feel like maybe that is something that we need to consider in trying to reach out and connect with somebody to get them some help, we'll use Lisa that way in terms of having her make a phone call and introducing us as a unit, or talking to them for a few minutes to build some rapport and then get into the discussion about how she works with the police and this is the work that we're trying to do. So she allows us to try to bridge that gap, that sometimes we encounter.
And you see what we're wearing. I've been in this role as CIT coordinator for almost 2 years now, and from all the research that I've done from when I first came into this position, was doing a lot of research of successful CIT programs around the country. And there is there's always going to be that little bit of a worry, and you don't know what level of crisis or mental state that individual's in when we're knocking on their door. So how am I supposed to allow them, when I'm knocking on their door, to let their guard down and trust me as an individual that's really doing everything I can to help them and, with their crisis state when I'm wearing that uniform. So that's why we wear the soft clothes, and we take that different approach to where when you have a couple guys and a gal knocking on your door, It just doesn't look like that standard police response. And
Right.
we've had a tremendous, tremendous success rate with that.
I typically open with, "I'm not a cop."
Yeah, yeah.
It softens the approach sometimes.
Yeah,
There's
it
nothing more
does.
intimidating
So,
than seeing,
Yeah.
the two cops and the social worker knocking on your door.
It's like a bad joke, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, after a few minutes with really almost anybody, they
Yeah.
realize what we're about and
Right.
you know, that it's not about them being in trouble. We make that very clear. It's about us, you know, making sure that they have in place what they need to be their best, to feel their best.
Now, is there, when you get calls in, the original call that comes in, and when a CIT officer responds, is there a usual one that comes up a lot? Or is it just somebody that has concerns about somebody with mental health issues or acting erratically? What would you say?
I'll be honest with you, Tom. I'd say the most common call for service that these officers are going to out there on the streets are attempt suicides. Yes.
Which correlates to what we see, you know, in the therapy world as well too. It seems like an increase with world of suicidal ideations and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And then, so you said about 500 officers are trained out of approximately 1,000, right?
Just with our department.
Just with your
Yes.
department. And then is that initiative, I think at one point I heard the initiative was to get everybody trained, but it is a costly venture as well too, right?
No, actually, the training program is free. all right?
Really?
So, yes, we're funded through the Missouri Coalition, which is a part of the Missouri Department of Mental Health. So CIT training is free. It's just more, for us, it's a little bit, you know, it's time consuming. Is it fantastic training? Absolutely. Is it needed? Absolutely. We don't give it in our police academy at the St. Louis County Municipal Police Academy, just because there are already over 980 hours of training. Wow. All right. And again, many of us, we consider that this is an advanced level of training. So we don't want to overwhelm these recruits when it's a matter of, hey, you're going through the police academy for 6 months. You're learning all these laws and how to really just kind of understand policing. And then we're going to put you in a patrol car with a field training instructor for 15 weeks. And then if you pass that test, and once you get off your field training, now the remainder of that full first year is your probationary period. And that's a test as well. So for St. Louis County, once you get off that probationary period, that's when we will get you on that list, and then we'll try to get you to that into the CIT program.
At the same time, we understand the need for some level of this training. So what we decided to do several years ago now is we found a program called Mental Health First Aid, which you're probably familiar with.
Yeah.
And they do a public safety version of Mental Health First Aid, which we started offering to our recruits about 4 years ago, I guess now. And that's done a lot. It was very well received at the recruit level. It's a very basic level of training, but we get into some good discussion about some things they might encounter with folks in crisis, you know, on the street. So they feel a little more confident coming out of the academy, graduating from the academy. And then also at the same time, after they get off that probation period, like Sarge was talking about, we've found that now there's more interest in the 40-hour CIT. And we're having, you know, more folks go to their commanders and ask for, you know, permission to attend the training. So it's been good.
Very good.
And then Lisa, what's that like for you to go out with these guys, right? Because it's a whole different perspective. You're smiling, so I'm guessing it's fun, probably.
It is.
But that experience of being able to do that follow-up inside of the community with somebody who's, you know, been introduced to law enforcement or the criminal justice system.
Yeah, I really look at my position as a privilege. Working with these guys is great. It doesn't ever feel like work. And then when we're invited into someone's home to sit down with them, and they might be telling us a story that no one's heard, this might be the first time that they've brought it up, it really is a privilege to be able to spend that time in those moments with those folks. And just, we were talking on the way here, to be in this position, you have to sort of understand the police culture, and also not be too social worky, right? Because a lot of times these folks are coming from a crisis where if we're just going to throw some resources at them and tell them what they should do, you know, that's never going to be very helpful for them. So we want to find that balance. But yeah, this is absolutely, I consider it a privilege to work with these guys every day.
Wow.
It's been a great mix for us because I think as we encounter folks that we deal with in the community, the three of us especially being together and having experienced one another and how we work, we have a very good way of kind of talking that person into the conversation, where they don't necessarily feel like they're being talked at. We just, we want to have a discussion, and we want to see, hey, is this the time for you? Is there anything we can do for you? Because the fact of the matter is, these folks have to want help for us to have any real permanent impact, And I think we do a good job of communicating that to these people, so it's good.
About how many times would you visit a client?
From the initial, like if you
Yeah.
have one particular individual we're helping,
Yeah.
every situation's different.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I've had, we can call them clients if you want to say, that once they've been referred to us, from the patrol CIT officers that are out there. I mean, it might simply be one follow-up phone call to where that person says, hey, you know what, I was in a little bit of a bad moment, but this and that, and that this is what led to it, but I'm doing okay. To much more extreme cases to where I've had individuals that I made that first contact with over a year and a half ago, and we still stay in touch. Phone calls every couple weeks, text messages. I mean, my phone blew up from about 4 or 5 different individuals that we've basically that we've had the opportunity to help just on Christmas Day. Hey, thank you. You helped save my life. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here right now. It's an amazing job of what we really get, of what we do.
But it never stops.
No, it
never
doesn't.
stops.
Yeah,
gonna
you
say, yeah.
see the viewers, that are listening, or I said viewers.
Viewers.
Right now. The viewers that are, yeah. So all the listeners right now, they can't see it, but you see my cell phone
Yeah.
right in front of me right now. We're on call 24/7, 365. Our phones never turn off. But that's because we're passionate about this job.
So what brought you guys to this part of policing, right? So there must have been something that said, hey, this is cool. I want to get further, deeper into this.
For me, I had a number of challenging residents in the area that I was permanently assigned to when I was in patrol. And I realized after dealing with folks repeatedly that it went a long way to talk to some of these folks, especially the ones experiencing the more severe type situations. If I met with them and talked to them when they were feeling well or feeling better, then I was more well received from them when they were in crisis. They knew my face. They knew what I was about. They knew that I really wanted to help them. And so when the opportunity came to do this in a full-time capacity, I was all about it. There was no question that I wanted to give it a try, because it was just very rewarding work, very satisfying work.
I went through the second CIT program when it was first originated back in 2004. So it's something I've always been passionate about. And once I had the opportunity, after being a watch commander in one of our local precincts, the prior CIT coordinator was promoted to lieutenant, and I immediately put my application in and my name in the hat, and the Colonel of Special Operations and Chief Belmer selected me, and it's been a blessing ever since.
That's awesome. And I think it's so, for the community to realize there's this follow-up that's going on from the police department. It's not just a one and done type of thing, where you have this interaction. And so for the general public to realize, like your phone is going off, and then a year and a half that you're touching base with this person here and there. I mean, that's the wraparound services. That's the continued support that it takes to change a community, right? At the same time as trying to keep it safe.
And we just touch a piece of it. There is so many people that need help that aren't getting it. We could absolutely keep multiple officers and counselors busy full time. We just touch, we call it triage. We just touch a piece of it.
And if I could just have one of those clients call me and I talk to them for 15 or 20 minutes, and during that 15 to 20 minute long conversation, I calm them down and I help them de-escalate whatever that crisis state is, 911 never has to get called. The chance that a police officer that's not CIT trained, that might not be the best in dealing with that situation, never has to respond, because I have that relationship and that rapport already built with them. So I want them to call me. I want them to call us. Yeah.
So if a person that's out there is making a call, can they request a CIT officer if they know about it?
Absolutely, absolutely. A large part of what we do is, community outreach. with CIT. So we present and discuss. It's basically a CIT overview presentation that we provide. We probably do that maybe 40 or 50 times a year from local schools. We give this presentation to UMSL, Lindenwood, Wash U, so from different schools to churches, different organizations, foster parents, whoever wants to know about CIT and how it can benefit them in the community, we will talk about it. But not only that, when we do give that community piece and we give that presentation, we talk about, hey, don't let this program just sit here with you today. Talk about it and share it with your family members and your friends, so that when they are driving down the street tomorrow and they see that it appears that it looks like somebody's in crisis, they have that confidence that they can call that non-emergency or emergency number, let the dispatcher know what's going on and what their observations are, and then they can request that CIT officer.
Awesome. So, having friends in law enforcement, I know at times the stress level, right? So for you guys, how do you take care of yourselves, right? Because I know sometimes that culture is sometimes, hey, I can handle it, right? But, see, exactly. That's probably why you have a counselor riding around with you
Right.
a few times, right? But what do you guys do, and how do you guys, I guess, preach that to your fellow peers as well, too?
Wellness is incredibly important, and St. Louis County Police Department has really stepped forward the last couple years in making wellness a priority. I know that they're still in discussions about creating an entire wellness unit for our department. So they're slowly doing research to where they're trying to figure out what that best avenue will be for our entire department. But it is definitely in the works. We have a fantastic EAP program. But no, we have to do better at taking care of ourselves. And Chris and I, we're a very unique couple and relationship, because obviously, there's two officers for the crisis intervention unit, a sergeant and a patrol officer. But I look at him as a brother and a friend. I mean, with the amount of contacts and the stressful situations that we get into, we depend on each other. So, we know if we're having a bad day, and we know how to, use those same de-escalation techniques on each other. But we really do. We do well at taking care of each other, and we got to allow ourselves to have that time off, to step away. I know if we have a long week and he says, hey, I got to take a ride down to the farm, I'm going to be, I'm going to be out of the box for the next 6 hours, where he's not going to be phone responsive. I know that he needs that, and he's going to get that, because you have to do what you got to do what you got to do to take care of yourself. From PTing, gym, running, mountain biking, whatever the case might be.
Eating right.
Eating right. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, you got to try at least, right?
Right.
Yeah. So from a community standpoint too, it's like, so I got a friend who's a referee, buddy who's a referee, right, for basketball, and he's like, when I put on this this referee jersey, people think they can say whatever they want to me, and he goes, it's amazing, So it's like at times, the stress level that you guys are under, especially the ones that are out in some of those districts, right? I mean, what do you want the regular community to know and to remember about officers who are out there serving and protecting? Yeah, both of you are ready to roll on that one, yeah.
So officers, especially today, are working in a very difficult environment. They just are. Simply our acceptance is different, in a lot of communities than it was, even 4 or 5 years ago. So the first thing that comes to my mind is to say that our basic level of stress and anxiety is probably higher than it's ever been. I know it is with me. I know that it's been an issue for me in recent years, as it has been with Sarge. And we've both been able to recognize that and put things in place that allow ourselves to feel better. So I would encourage, the community just to understand that it's a tough job, and we're human just like they are, and we have needs, and we have the same personal stress and anxiety that everyone does, but then we get the community's trauma, stress, anxiety, pressures, all of that on top of just the regular everyday stuff. So it's challenging. So be as patient as you can with us. We've got a great group of officers, not only in St. Louis County Police Department, but the municipalities surrounding. They're all trying to do the best job that they can. And so support them as you see fit for you personally, and I think we'll continue to grow a stronger relationship with the community, especially through programs like crisis intervention.
And Lisa, your perspective of the clients that you're seeing when you're going out in the mental health issues, are you seeing this level of significant mental health, like very severe mental health symptoms? Are you seeing a lot more trauma? Where do you kind of seeing as well too?
So typically when we're working with someone, there's always that possibility of that underlying trauma. And so based on what we know now about trauma affecting communities at whole, I just assume that there's a layer of trauma with everyone I work with. And so we try to focus on what the symptom is presenting as to help kind of manage that crisis a little bit, but then I encourage them to go on to additional counseling just to kind of manage all of those additional symptoms that might be triggered by that trauma.
Yeah, because I think that's a huge part of it. It's like, yeah, there's mental illness a lot of times involved, but then when you look at those environmental traumas that are going on day in and day out, and like we have a pretty big school program that we run as well too, and we see a lot of kids that are coming to school and they might fall asleep in the classroom, right? And then the teacher's like, "You get up, you lazy, blah blah blah," and then that's the only place they feel safe,
Right, exactly.
because they've had some bad stuff going on at nighttime.
Sure. No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All of our team is certified clinical trauma professionals. There's 4 of us at BHR that work in the community outreach, community relations department, and so we've all had that additional training in the trauma world, and so we try to treat mental illness for what it is, but a lot of times it's rooted in that trauma, and so if we can help people process that trauma better, a lot of times that mental illness or those symptoms will kind of mitigate themselves.
So I've also heard about diversionary courts as well too, right? And I know mental health court started up in St. Louis County not too long ago with Judge Burton.
So Joyce Kelly, who was a prosecutor for the St. Louis County Counselor's Office, they really kind of spearheaded the mental health court a little over 10 years ago now.
okay.
And it's slowly been growing. Now that county ordinance level, the county counselor's office, that's for ordinance level violations. But they've been, like I said, well established for more than 10 years now. But they're also we have diversionary courts at the state prosecuting attorney's office and the federal district attorney's office here in St. Louis. What are the diversionary courts? It's when somebody is in some level of a crisis state. Let's say they might have a diagnosis and they're non-compliant with their medications at the time, and they commit some type of a violation of the law. These CIT officers, when they're out there and they're making contact with these individuals and they recognize whatever that crisis state is, or once they learn throughout their investigation that they have that diagnosis and they're non-compliant with their medications, that officer can write in that report all of their findings, and then their supervisor will refer that case not to just your standard local courts, but they will request that be seen through the mental health court, which is a diversionary court. Well established, and obviously the goal there is to not just see that this individual committed a crime knowingly of right mind, to where they might receive a fine or jail time. It's about the courts actually assisting them in finding their wellness.
And then from a perspective when you guys are going out and making the rounds and visiting, but even with the normal amount of calls coming in, is there a particular age range you see in regards to individuals that you guys are being called on?
I don't think so. We receive so many different calls. We've helped individuals, I'd say as young as 8 and 9, where we've had parents calling, in reference to defiant issues. Maybe they might have a child that's on the spectrum and, calling, asking for help or advice, to 80 to 90-year-old individuals that might, have Alzheimer's or dementia, and they're just, they have family members that are looking for help. Chris and I mean, in no way, shape, or fashion will we say that we're the experts on mental health, but we pride ourselves in learning about all the different resources that are out in the community, that no matter what is brought to our attention, we're going to be able to point them in the right way to where we can get them help.
So this is, and maybe this is the TV coming out to me and the movie coming out to me, but if there's a situation like a hostage situation or anything of that regard where, you know, somebody's barricaded themselves, does CIT fit into that, or is that a special kind of area of expertise for individuals within the department?
Depends on the type of situation. You'll see national models when it comes to crisis negotiations. CIT is always a very big part of those negotiation efforts. Here in St. Louis County, just for a little over a year now, we have a newly created crisis negotiation team, and that team consists of Chris here, who's a full-time crisis intervention officer, two officers that are on our tactical operations unit, and then we have 2 officers that are assigned to our special response unit, all having gone through crisis systems management basic and advanced negotiator programs, to where we've been able to grow and learn as a team to where we can go assist somebody that it might be a mental health crisis and they're barricaded, to it could be a suicidal ideology barricade, all the way to a criminal barricade where there's felony charges, they know that they've committed a crime and they've barricaded, or even to a hostage state. We will come out together as a team, and we work together as that team to figure out what is the best way to de-escalate that situation and get a compliant surrender, so that way we don't have to use force, and that way that our tactical operations officers don't have to go in and get them. We want them to come out to us.
Awesome.
We also offer that service as assistance to all the municipalities within St. Louis County. So we will respond and do that work, obviously not incorporated St. Louis County, but if one of the municipalities in particular gets involved in a situation where they could use that type of assistance, we will respond and negotiate for them as well.
So a key word is I'm hearing this team, you know, really everybody working together and many different minds coming together to solve that situation.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Would you guys like to talk about how the new community mental health liaison also completed that training as well?
She has recently gone through basic negotiator training, and we hope to be able to use her on certain call-outs, especially mental health or suicidal barricaded situations, where we can have that counselor on scene to assist us and give us advice.
Wow, that's got to be exciting.
I spent a week in Iowa, so I'm really excited.
Which is not
to
very
go.
Got
exciting.
to keep
I
it
hope it was
balanced,
worth it.
right? Yeah, a week in Iowa. I hope so too. Well, awesome. That's going to be some challenging times for you, but also probably pretty rewarding, hopefully.
I think it shows the residents of the county that the CIT team is doing everything they can to help folks stay safe. So I think it only really just reflects well on the efforts that are being made for the citizens. So.
Awesome.
Absolutely. We're going to do whatever we can, again, to respond to a scene, any level of crisis, no matter it be a low-level crisis to, very, very bad crisis. We're going to do whatever we can to de-escalate it, build rapport with that individual, and get them to come out to us safely.
Great. Well, thank you guys for coming on today. I'm just proud that you guys are the work that you're doing, speaking up for mental health and making just strides in the community. So thank you for your service. And I think we've probably got 2 or 3 more podcasts just from this one that we can build
Absolutely.
upon. So until next time, this is Tom Duff with Mental Health Matters.
This has been Mental Health Matters with Tom Duff of St. Louis Counseling Services. Check out stlouiscounseling.org for more information.